You don't lose self-control when you break. You lose it earlier, in the small moment, where one part of you still asks for permission to stay the same. You already know what would hold you in place. The food you should not touch, the message you should not send, the hour you should not waste. And still, before action begins, something in you waits to see if the old self agrees to die. You feel that pause. You recognize it. And because it doesn't, you call the hesitation weakness. But it is not weakness. It is a funeral you keep interrupting because the part that must disappear is still being asked whether it is ready to go. Chapter 1. The part that refuses to be buried. Ren knew that moment before he had language for it. He was not uncontrolled in obvious ways. From the outside, his life looked almost disciplined because he could make plans, understand consequences, and speak about change with unusual clarity. But every evening, the same small court opened inside him. He would sit in front of the thing he had promised not to do, and nothing dramatic would happen. No collapse, no panic. Only a quiet delay, as if the action he had chosen still needed approval from the part of him that preferred comfort. That was the part he kept protecting, not because he loved it, because it felt like him. And that made every attempt at control feel strangely disloyal, as if becoming steady meant abandoning someone he had spent years defending. Chapter 2. Why the old self survives. Self-control does not fail because you do not know what is better. Most people know. They know what ruins their sleep, what drains their focus, what makes them feel ashamed the next morning. The problem is that knowledge does not kill attachment. The mind can understand a consequence and still keep the identity that creates it alive. This is the first thing that must die. The belief that the version of you who wants the wrong thing deserves a vote, because as long as that version is still consulted, every moment of restraint becomes a negotiation. And negotiation always feels fair until it quietly gives the old life one more day. Chapter 3. The permission you keep asking for. Ren began noticing the pattern in places that seemed unrelated. He lost control with food in the same way he lost control with his phone. He delayed work. In the same way, he returned to conversations that already made him smaller. The objects changed. The inner movement did not. There was always 1 second where he could have moved cleanly. You have felt that second. Then came the second question. Do I really have to do this now? That question looked harmless, but it opened the door, because once he asked it, the action was no longer decided. It was being reviewed by the part of him that wanted escape. And the strange thing was that he did not feel rebellious in those moments. He felt reasonable. That was the danger. The old self rarely returns with force. It returns as permission. Chapter 4. What discipline actually removes. In Japanese training, form exists before freedom. Not because form is holy, but because it removes the part of the mind that keeps asking whether today should be different. A bow, a stance, a repeated movement, a fixed beginning. These things look small from the outside, almost too simple to respect. But they do something most people never build. They remove the need to feel ready. That is why self-control cannot begin with a mood. This is the second thing that must die. The expectation that you should feel aligned before you obey what you already decided. A mood still belongs to the part that changes. Form belongs to the part that remains. Discipline is not what you do. It is what you no longer negotiate. Chapter 5. The comfort that calls itself truth. Ren hated this part most because it sounded honest. I'm tired. I need a break. I don't feel like myself today. Some of it was true. That made it harder. Because self-betrayal rarely arrives as a lie. It arrives as a half-truth that wants to be treated as the whole truth. And once Ren treated discomfort as information that deserved authority, the structure disappeared. He was not choosing comfort anymore. He was obeying it. This is the third thing that must die. The habit of making every discomfort meaningful. Because not every feeling is a message. Some feelings are just withdrawal from the old pattern, losing control. And if you honor every signal, you will never know which part of you is speaking. Chapter 6. The Death That Feels Like Loss. This is the point where many people leave because they hear self-control and imagine they are being asked to become harder. But the real loss is quieter. You are not losing pleasure. You are losing the identity that used pleasure to avoid meeting yourself. You are not losing freedom. You are losing the illusion that endless choice made you free. This is the fourth thing that must die. The fantasy that the undisciplined self is more authentic. Ren had believed that for years. The spontaneous version of him felt more real. The restrained version felt artificial, until he saw that the spontaneous version was often just the most conditioned one. It did not choose freely. It repeated what had been repeated longest. Chapter 7. What was never allowed to live. After that, something became more uncomfortable, not less. Because if the old self was not truth and comfort, was not guidance and negotiation, was not freedom, then Ren had to face the thing underneath all of it. There was a self in him that could stay, but it had never been allowed to lead long enough to feel natural. Every time it appeared, the old system called it pressure. Too much, too strict. Not me. And because Ren believed those labels, he kept killing the part of him that was capable of becoming steady. This is the fifth thing that must die. The loyalty to the person you were when nobody required you to become someone else. Once he saw that, self-control stopped looking like force. It looked like grief, because something does have to die. The part that still thinks losing control is proof of who you are. And until that part dies, the disciplined self will keep feeling like a stranger standing at the door of your own life, waiting for permission from the person who keeps ruining it. And that is why the door never opens, even when you are already standing in front of it.